Today is 1 February. I'm Charlie Garrett. This is the CG Prophecy Report. Province, nation, or state? Place your bets. That and a lot of other things to go over on today's report. Okay, let's see here. As I said, it's the 1st of February, and it is winter in Sarasota, Florida. It's 36 degrees right now, and that's very rare for it to get that cold, and usually it only lasts an hour or two at night, and then it comes right back up. And today they don't plan on getting, I think, somewhere in the 40s. So it's really cold. We did not get any snow flurries, which they said we would. And yeah, well, you say that, but I got up at 12 o'clock last night and I was shining to see if anything was falling out of the sky, and nothing did. But North Florida did get a lot of snow, and some people, like in North Carolina, South Carolina, got absolutely hammered. So it's cold out there, but we're all here, so there you go. And we got lots of visitors today. A couple of them we got from Washington State. They were here before. We've got Daryl and Melody, and they're visiting once again. And apparently they're staying right on Siesta Key, just across from the mall. You're across from 7-Eleven, right? The mall and the 7-Eleven I take care of. If you go out there at 6 o'clock in the morning, you'll see me barefoot cleaning the place up. But I did not go. I never go on Sunday. That's the only day of the week that I don't do that. And then we've got Rob and Ruth again. They've been here before. How are you guys doing? And they're down just visiting with some friends today. And one of them is Paul. Where's Paul? He's over there. And then we have Bob, who is a friend here in Sarasota that's visiting. So good to meet you there, sir. Anyway, we got some news from Israel today. We've got the Jerusalem Post. Israel's imports of Azerbaijani oil via Turkey jump despite Ankara's trade ban. So Ankara says no trade with Israel at all. This was a while ago. We reported on that. But there's not much you can do once something leaves a port and the oil goes through Turkey. And so Azerbaijan is selling oil to Israel, despite Turkey not wanting them to get it. Official Turkish data show that the trade between Turkey and Israel has been zero since June 2024, after Ankara imposed a ban on Israel's war against the Palestinian militant group Hamas. I should say terrorist group Hamas, but whatever. Turkey does not control where Azerbaijani oil pumped through the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline is sold, but said in November 2024 that exporters using Ceyhan respected its decision to end trade with Israel, and oil was not being loaded with Israel as the destination. However, Kepler data shows that Israel's imports of Azerbaijani crude from Ceyhan jumped 31% year on year to 94,000 barrels per day in 2025. It is the highest since 2022 and widening its lead over Russia, Israel's second largest supplier. The figures are the latest example of Israel continuing trade with businesses in countries where governments condemn its actions in Gaza. South Africa, which has accused Israel of genocide at the ICC, was its top coal supplier in 2025. Israel's Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure said it does not comment on the sources of its oil imports. The government said Turkey was ignoring international agreements by imposing a trade ban. So at least they're getting the oil, and people are being sneaky about it, and they all know this is happening. But in the end, Turkey gets revenue because it's going through them anyway, so they probably don't care, but they've just got this symbolic thing about poking Israel. From the Times of Israel, Israel demolishes UNRWA's East Jerusalem headquarters. They demolished it. Yeah, UN agency, unprecedented attack, they say. It's an attack. Now, think of the logic here, okay? The move to demolish UNRWA's headquarters comes after years of legislative measures against the agency, which Israel accuses of collusion with Hamas and participation in terrorist activities. The Knesset passed a pair of laws in late October 2024 banning UNRWA from operating within Israeli territory. Despite the ban, UNRWA operations, including schools, healthcare, and other social services, are still hobbling along in East Jerusalem. So they banned it in their own country, and they're still doing it regardless. UNRWA spokesman Jonathan Fowler said in a statement to the international press that Israeli forces stormed into the compound shortly after 7 a.m., Israel defended the move to demolish the compound, with the foreign ministry saying in a statement that UNRWA Hamas had already ceased its operations at this site and no longer had any UN personnel or UN activity there. The compound does not enjoy any immunity, and the seizure of this compound by Israeli authorities was carried out in accordance with both Israeli and international law. If America said we don't want the UN in New York anymore, that would be the end of it. This is a sovereign nation. We are not required to have their building in our nation. Israel is not required to have land set aside for the UN. Anywhere else, they wouldn't even question it. You don't want us here, we're out of here. Except Israel. From the Times of Israel, number of UK schools marking Holocaust Remembrance Day drops nearly 60% since October 7. So get attacked by a terrorist group of people and the world starts just moving away from you. Why did you allow yourselves to be attacked is probably the thinking or something. I don't know. Observance of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which marks the day Auschwitz was liberated by the Red Army in 1945, had been rising in recent years, with more than 2,000 secondary schools in the UK holding commemorative or educational events to memorialize the day in 2023. However, since the Gaza war began with the Hamas terror onslaught of October 7, 2023, unleashing a wave of anti-Semitism around the world, observance in the educational system has been waning. Just under 1,200 held events in 2024. Only 854 did so in 2025, out of approximately 4,200 secondary schools across the country. So it's one of those things that is it makes no sense, but we were attacked. They bombed our buildings in New York, and we went over and we started having war with them. And all of a sudden, we're the aggressors. I don't understand that thinking, but that's what people don't like, the fact that somebody can beat somebody else up, even if they killed innocent people for no reason at all. They have their problem with us, and they can cut off trade. They can do whatever they want. But to do what they did deserved what we did. And the same thing is true with Israel. They have a right to defend themselves and to take out whoever comes against them. But the world doesn't see it that way. From the cradle, I bet you remember me saying this, that the shooting of people in Iran is going to be blamed on Israel. Okay, listen to this. From the cradle, Israeli bullets found inside bodies of Iranian children killed in riots. And then, of course, these people on X are all saying, see, the Jews are in there. And they're like, Israel's going to get a busload of people. They're going to drive them we're here to kill your people. And they just start shooting, right?
So dumb.
And this is the brain pan of most of the people of the world at this point in history. Got some news from Christianity here. Post-millennial, Kansas school guidance counselor tells Jesus Charlie Kirk and Trump cannot be used in role model assignment. This actually made a lot of big news media. Students in sixth grade in Kansas of all places, were told they could not use President Trump, Charlie Kirk, or Jesus Christ in an assignment that asked them to name role models in their lives, according to a lawsuit filed by a parent and child against the school. The incident took place at Marshall Elementary School in Eureka, Kansas, according to a complaint that recently came to light by the ACLJ. Students were not to tell their parents about what took place, of course, after a school counselor named Casey Countryman assigned them to do a Find Your Voice project, where they named their role model according to a letter from the ACLJ. Now, I guarantee you, if somebody had said, Obama's my role model, that would have been acceptable, right? The ACLJ is representing a child as well as a parent who was involved in the case. The letter from the ACLJ to the DOJ alleges that Countrymen participated in religious discrimination by prohibiting students from identifying religious figures as role models, while permitting and even encouraging students to identify secular role models for a school assignment, as well as a viewpoint discrimination by prohibiting students from identifying conservative political figures as role models, but while permitting other political figures and politically active athletes, by prohibiting students from identifying religious figures, including Jesus Christ, as role models, while permitting secular role models. The school engaged in discrimination based on religious viewpoint. Marshall Elementary School Principal Stacy Coulter provided a statement but did not address the incident in detail. We are aware of this incident and are always working with families and our school staff to make sure every learning activity is a positive and encouraging experience for every student. You know, it's the typical thing that you get when they get caught with their, hand in the cookie jar. From the Washington Post, morally acceptable for U.S. troops to disobey orders, Archbishop says. This is an Archbishop of the Catholic Church is telling them this. You know what? If you go into the U.S. military, you are under a different standard than you are outside of it. This guy can get in real trouble, people in real trouble by saying this if they follow his advice. As the Trump admin intervenes in Venezuela, readies troops for a possible deployment to Minnesota, and threatens to seize Greenland, the Catholic Archbishop for the U.S. Armed Forces said it would be morally acceptable. Morally acceptable. This is an Archbishop for the U.S. Armed Services. For troops to disobey orders that violated their conscience. Can you imagine that? Listen, I'm being sent to Vietnam, and I don't think it's nice for me to go to Southeast Asia. I don't like durian, and that's against my conscience. And so that is insane, what this guy is saying. They should remove any connection to this man from the U.S. military immediately. Archbishop Timothy P. Broglio is among a chorus of Catholic leaders questioning the admin's use of force. His comments also underscored the mounting concern being voiced by the first American pontiff, Pope Leo XIV, as well as his top cardinals in the United States over the Trump admin's foreign policy. Asked whether he was worried about the military personnel in his pastoral care, Broglio replied, "I am obviously worried because they could be put in a situation where they're being ordered to do something which is morally questionable. If it's morally questionable and it's wrong, they have avenues within the U.S. military to handle that. And they also have legal avenues outside of the military as well, but not religious avenues. That is not his area of responsibility. Strictly speaking, he or she would be within the realm of their own conscience. It would be morally acceptable to disobey that order. But that's perhaps putting that individual in an untenable situation. Yeah, he's going to get a Article 15. He's probably going to get a courts-martial, and he'll be making big rocks into little rocks in Fort Leavenworth. Yeah, absolutely. As head of the D.C.-based Archdiocese for the Military Services, USA, Broglio oversees the chaplains who serve Catholics and others at U.S. military bases, Veterans Affairs, health, care facilities, and diplomatic missions worldwide. He needs to be removed from any of those positions immediately. Breitbart, New York ends crusade to make Catholic nuns pay for abortions. Well, the Supreme Court overturned them 3 times. You think it's time for them to get the picture? Finally. From Fox, Catholic University in Chicago covers abortion care services through student health plan. So they say one thing in the Catholic Church, but then they do other things. I got some news from the Mideast and Africa today from Fox. UNRWA officials lobby congressional staffers against Trump terrorist designation threat. He says, I think they probably are terrorists. Trump, he says things like that right off the top of his head. And then, of course, he lets his people go through the legal process to make these determinations. But they're trying to work against Trump. That ain't going to happen. If Trump's got something in his mind and it's legal, it's going to happen. The video conference was organized by UNRWA USA, the American nonprofit that supports the agency through advocacy and fundraising. UNRWA USA Executive Director Mara Kroenfeld, she opened the briefing by saying the goal was to make clear that UNRWA is still on the ground in Gaza and the West Bank, despite what she described as the Netanyahu government's insidious efforts to systematically prevent UNRWA from continuing its life-saving humanitarian work. I'm not going to finish that article because I'm getting upset, but we have documented again and again for the past 10 or 15 years the UNRWA's advocating the killing of Jews in their public school books, of having people in the UNRWA that have attacked Jews, killed Jews. It's not even worth debating at this point. They are a terrorist organization under the auspices of the UN. Zero Hedge. Pakistan to send Chinese warplanes. This could be a game changer here. We're going to see where it goes, but I've said this recently, either in a Bible study or on the Prophecy Update, that when people talk about Gog and Magog, they always overlook one country. Does anybody remember what I said? It begins with L and ends with Ibia. Okay, yeah, that's right. They always overlook that. Oh, it's going to happen tomorrow, right? And no, it says explicitly in Scripture that Libya will be a part of this coalition, okay? Until they are a viable part of any coalition, it will never happen. So make sure that you look at the countries in Ezekiel 38 and remember them. And then when you see somebody saying, well, they're going to be attacking Israel really soon, and this is the hook in the jaw and all that kind of stuff, they don't know what they're talking about. It has to be a viable part of the entire coalition. But this may help change that. Pakistan has sealed a deal worth over $4 billion to sell military equipment, including warplanes, jointly built with China to General Haftar's LNA. The deal could significantly alter the military balance of power in the oil-rich North African country, where Haftar rules over the eastern half of a UN-recognized government led by Prime Minister Deby in Tripoli, which controls the west. A copy of the arms deal said Haftar's LNA would purchase 16 JF-17 fighter jets, multi-role combat aircraft jointly developed by Pakistan and China, along with 12 Super Mushak trainer aircraft used for basic pilot training. One of the Pakistani officials said the agreement would be spread over 2.5 years with land, sea, and air equipment included. Two Pakistani officials said the deal could reach up to $4.6 billion, Pakistan's largest in history. Neither the Tripoli government nor Haftar's forces have a substantial air force. Haftar made a failed bid to conquer Tripoli in 2019 with the backing of the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Russia. Turkey intervened to defend the government in Tripoli, so they're kind of working against each other, sending mercenaries and TB2 drones. Since then, it has stationed thousands of troops in the western half of Libya and sealed a controversial maritime agreement with the government in Tripoli. So you've got Turkey that wants to deal with them because they're profiting from this direction. Russia's up here and they want to go with the other half. Who is going to win? It's hard to say at this point, but until this is settled, it ain't going to happen. So just when you see these articles that get all excited about these things, remember Libya. Times of Israel. Standoff with Iran over nuclear inspections cannot last forever, says IAEA chief. Okay, they've been saying that now at the UN and the ICC or not the ICC, the Atomic Nuclear Regulatory Agency. What is it called? Anyway, they've been saying that for years and years. It can't last. It can't last. And Iran just keeps snubbing them. Well, Trump is not going to take it. He's got a big force around them right now, and he says, you can deal, and he's given them a date. After that date, anything is on the table. Anything. So get ready for that. Breitbart. Argentina designates Iran's IRGC Quds Force as terrorist group. Gateway Pundit. Military-aged Iraqi migrant under deportation orders avoids prison after murdering a 16-year-old Ukrainian refugee by throwing her in front of a train. This is Germany. They won't even deport this guy, much less do anything about it. Gateway Pundit. Half of Germans say migration is the country's biggest problem. Majority see economic decline and free speech under threat. Zero Hedge. French Navy intercepts Russia-linked oil tanker in Mediterranean Sea. And here's what they said, and I want you to tell me why this is so ridiculous. We'll let nothing pass. They have illegal migrants coming in constantly. Thousands of them drown on the way there, but lots of them come through. They land in Spain. They land in France. And then what does France do? They open their border on the north, and they just let them go across the straits to England because England pays more than France does to have these people in their country. We'll let nothing pass when it comes to making money off of Russian oil, right? Zero Hedge. Despite rapes and violence, Netherlands to keep migrant student integration project alive. Mongolia. Let's see here. This is from ENAS. From Armenia to Mongolia, the curious countries that joined Trump's Board of Peace and those that didn't. So they named a bunch of countries that did. Let me read you a list here of them. Countries represented at the signing: Bahrain, Morocco, Argentina, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bulgaria, Hungary, Indonesia, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, Pakistan, Paraguay, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, Uzbekistan, and Mongolia. Yes, good job. Daniel 12 Technology today from the Times of Israel. Israeli team pioneers bacteria factories to produce medicine. Anybody see this? Really cool. Inside the body. The pioneering approach, not yet tested on humans, that's okay, they've got it on animals so far and it's worked, uses live, harmless bacteria that act like tiny factories, producing therapeutic proteins inside the body, exactly where they are needed. I needed it for the past year with my H. pylori bacteria having an ulcer, right? Well, now that'll be done in your body. We are accustomed to thinking that to introduce a drug into the body, it must be manufactured in a factory and then delivered via capsule or an injection. This could be a turning point in the world of pharmaceuticals and a new paradigm for both drug production and consumption. Proteins are used in a variety of medicines, Mizrahi said. One example of a medical protein is insulin, used to help control blood sugar. Another hormone helps people with kidney disease make red blood cells. There are also antibodies and growth hormones made with proteins. However, proteins are very fragile and their configuration is critical. If they are swallowed, for example, the stomach and intestines treat them like food and break them down so they are ineffective. The researchers' novel method enables bacteria to produce and release perfectly configured, ready-for-use proteins within the body. After testing on mice, the approach was written up in a peer-reviewed study. The technique opens the door to a new kind of treatment, including therapeutics for severe burns, war wounds, diabetes wounds, and inflammatory skin diseases such as P. psoriasis. Yes, I pronounced the P. The lab is inspired by nature, using knowledge collected by nature for centuries. The bacteria, which are genetically modified, can then deliver medicines and therapeutics to treat cancer, metabolic disorders, and inflammatory bowel disease. I could have done without the last one, but anyway. It's a dangerous world. We got plagues all over the place. Book of Revelation said that would happen. From Just the News, doctor punished for questioning COVID vaccines. This is back when COVID was going on. Says she could have made, now this is why they were pushing this. She could have made $35 million by giving shots. Yep. Mary Talley Bowden cited her spreadsheet taken from Houston Methodist public list of charge for various treatments, which started at $999 for Pfizer's 2023-2024 vaccine for 5 through 11-year-olds, identified by its active ingredient Rextozinamerian or something, and top out nearly 6 times higher for the 2023-2024 recombinant adjuvated vaccine targeting Omicron XBB 1.5, possibly referring to Novavax. If I had vaccinated the 6,000 patients I treated for COVID, her, could have made $35,523,000. The hospital collects up to $5,920.50 per shot. Bowden wrote on X, referring to the most expensive shot on her spreadsheet. For comparison, the hospital charges $5 for an aspirin and $2.50 of paying in cash, she added. So you wonder why all these doctors sold themselves? Yes. Comes down to money. Just the News. Emails show Fauci, Collins plotting to circumvent impressive data for COVID natural immunity. Remember, they said that there was no such thing, it'll never happen. They knew it could. But when one guy can get $35 million, guess how much they could have gotten? Yes. The Biden admin grappled with research suggesting natural immunity was more effective than COVID-19. The vaccination shortly before federal vaccine mandates in 2021, admitting the rigor of the massive Israeli study and worrying it might undermine its promotion of one-size-fits-all vaccination. Newly released emails show. The FOIA production to protect the public's trust gives the most compelling evidence to date that federal officials knew Their pending mandates were scientifically shaky, yet repeatedly asserted in public, misrepresenting federal research that natural immunity could not match vaccine-acquired immunity. The emails add heft to prior claims by a now former FDA advisor going back 4 years that the feds ultimately rejected natural immunity as an exemption to vaccine mandates for bureaucratic reasons and kept pushing vaccines on all ages and conditions for the sake of simpler messaging, not science. I would say it's not simpler messaging. I would say it's money. They also reaffirmed the glaring lack of rigorous research by U.S. institutions on basic questions about SARS-CoV-2 and treatment outcomes, with many of the most important findings coming from abroad. The abnormally high risk of heart inflammation in young people post-vaccination, for example, emerged from Israeli data and institutions. So we didn't even bother checking what we were selling. We just set it out there. But the Israelis knew it was causing heart damage to people. Right? You know, you wonder why people no longer trust the FDA and the CDC, and they don't. Why would they? After all that, from the Epoch Times, few people have received updated COVID-19 vaccine, says the CDC. I wonder why. Morality, from Lad Bible, inventor of Suicide Pod, shares new design, a new design that will let couples end their lives together. Yeah, British couples say they wanted to go through the procedure to be the first to use we win! To use the double suicide pod, saying they wanted to die in each other's arms. If only one of the people pressed the button, then it wouldn't work. So it's like a little nuclear reactor thing down there where you have to send off the missile together, right? So it has to be a coordinated and conscious decision from both of the occupants. It's the world we're living in here. Can you imagine this? Mail Online, Canadian woman was euthanized against her will after her husband was fed up with caring for her. So she changed her mind. She says, I don't want to die. I'm just going to tell you because I don't want to read this whole article. I don't want to die. And so he got an opinion. The opinion says, no, I agree with the wife. And so he went out and got a second opinion. And he says, oh, I'll agree with you. And you look tired and you don't need this anymore. And so they killed her against her will. Canada. From the Post-Millennial, Trump admin launches Title IX investigation into 18 schools for allowing boys and girls sports. Good. The Post-Millennial Olympia City Council moves to expand civil rights protections, including, I hate to even use this word, polyamory. More than one wife or husband. They're going to protect a class now. Life News, Virginia Democrats pass amendment for abortions up to birth. I mean, as soon as they got power there, they have passed every bad law you can imagine. Breitbart, Trump says he signed executive order to bring back mental institutions. We've got to get these people off the streets. Fox, fired under Trump, former military officers launched Democrat bids for Congress. They're, trans? The guys that were wearing girls' clothes, and now they're running for Congress. So that means they're going to win if they're in Democrat districts. Epoch Times, LA schools are discriminating against white students with smaller classes for minorities. Gateway Pundit, Trump admin ends taxpayer funding for experiments using fetal tissue from aborted babies. Finally, got some other news here. Okay, this is a long article. I got another long article after it. Both of these deal with an issue. Let me read you this again. Province, nation, or state? Place your bets. Zero hedge. How Canada's only leverage over America disappeared in an instant. Now, I told you about this, but I want to read you this article and the next one, then one short one after that, and you'll see how it all fits together. American consumers and businesses will benefit from lower prices while oil companies have a chance for bigger profits. Venezuelans will benefit from increased investment, jobs, and profits in their country as well. This is why their stock market, Venezuela's stock market, jumped 50, 60, 70, 80% after the U.S. takeover. And if we recall that economic security is national security, then the new order in South America is also simultaneously supports U.S. national security while undermining our greatest rival, China. In war, dependable access to oil is as important as dependable access to kinetic arms. Access to ample, reliable flows of oil represents a key strategic interest. Removing one from such flow from the Chinese sphere of influence and bringing it into our own is tremendous progress towards this goal. But the biggest loser of all isn't China or Russia. It is Canada. Western Canada sends over, and I reported on this in a different context a couple weeks ago, but it's giving more information. They send over 4 million barrels a day of heavy crude to American refiners that are equipped to handle this type of oil. There's all different types of oil. When you take it out of the ground, it can be like glop, it can be real light and shiny, all kinds of oil in the world, and you have to know how to process all of them and what it is good for. Okay, but now with access to the massive flows of Venezuelan crude, which is similar to the Canadian flavor, the U.S. no longer needs to rely on Canada to keep the refineries on the Gulf of America running at full capacity. Instead, the oil shipments that previously went to China are already being redirected to American refiners, tens of millions of barrels worth just days after Maduro's capture. And while the U.S. is paying full market price for that oil, don't be surprised if oil prices start coming down because of this redirection. Bring down energy prices and you put downward pressure on prices throughout the economy. And U.S. control of Venezuela is also a second chance for jilted American oil companies to again profit from nearly 15 of the world's proven oil reserves. Venezuela will now assuredly receive billions of dollars of investment from American companies, many of whom are champing at the bit to regain access to the largest reserves in the world. That will mean a windfall of jobs and income for the Venezuelan people, all of which could have been Canada's. Bringing us back to the story of the biggest economic loser here. It didn't have to be this way for the, as they say, 51st state. But instead of welcoming oil and gas investment from the U.S. and building valuable infrastructure like pipelines, Canada has preferred to prioritize far-left causes and anti-energy agenda. After recent events, not only is Canada losing its biggest crude customer, but it's also losing its only real leverage in trade talks with the United States. They've lost all of it. Next article. Zero Hedge. Alberta sees large turnout for petition to separate from Canada. The petition requires at least 177,000 signatures in order to trigger the referendum, which would ultimately decide if the province will separate. Petitions have 120 days to collect the signatures. I bet you they'll have it in about 2 months. Pro-separation groups say that they could get as many as 1 million signatures, which would be a clear indication that Alberta will leave Canada. Alberta's population is currently 5 million. Some petition locations reported as many as 10,000 signatures in a day, and the public response is described as concerning by critics who want to remain part of Canada's constitutional monarchy. Alberta is widely considered the most conservative province in the country and has been at odds with the far-left Canadian government. Does anybody remember when I said just a while ago, Trump does not want Canada? Yeah. Remember I said that? He's saying we're going to make him the 51st state, and I said what he wants is Western Canada. It's all coming out now. The referendum would mean a simple yes-no question for voters on separation. A majority, 51% or more, would then lead to a legal process overseen by the Canadian federal government. Some polls indicate that 60% of Albertan citizens are still opposed to the measure. However, the recent turnout for the petition suggests the tide is turning. Recent conflicts with progressive elites in the Canadian government have driven Albertans to question their relationship. Alberta fought against the leftist government's pandemic lockdowns, church and business closures, and draconian vaccination requirements. They remain in opposition to Canada's new gun laws, which are incrementally removing all firearms from private hands. They also have been at odds with the federal government over resource development, energy policy, carbon taxation, and economic marginalization. Essentially, Alberta is a different nation when compared to the Canadian norm. It is also a commodity treasure trove that Canada exploits to feed its coffers while rarely giving anything back to provincial citizens. That's not a good market for keeping your people. Arguments against the referendum say that Alberta is landlocked, which would make its separation economically disastrous. That is not entirely true. Their shared border with the United States and a newfound sovereignty would allow the province to establish more significant oil pipelines, meaning pipelines which the Canadian government has consistently blocked in the past. This development, along with greater resource exploration and alliance with American interests, would make Alberta one of the wealthiest regions in the Western Hemisphere. Furthermore, Alberta stretches within 700 miles of the Arctic, an area of the world which is quickly becoming central to geopolitics. Early warning systems and NORAD bases in Alberta are integral to U.S. security. These bases could be shut down in the event that conflicts between Canada and the U.S. escalate. A free Alberta could become vital to U.S. defense. That's what I said, 2 months ago? Less? Zero Hedge. Trump officials held secret meetings with prominent Canadian group seeking to secede. A bombshell report in the Financial Times says that the U.S. officials have held recent talks with Canadian separatists seeking to break Alberta, Canada's oil-rich western province, away from Ottawa. Officials in the United States and President Trump administration discussed loaning Alberta $500 million to break up Canada and make it the 51st state, one source said to the Financial Times. Now, they have a choice. Are they going to be a province? Are they going to be their own state? Or are they going to join the United States? But Trump has been planning this. He's been lying in bed for the past 4 years, and his wheel's been going like this. All the things that need to happen to make America great again. And he's following through with every one of them. They do not want Canada as the 51st state because we're all a bunch of lefties up there, and we would lose the government immediately. But we want them because they're mostly conservative in that province. Yes. Fox 7, geological survey in Texas uncovers 1.6 billion barrels of oil. From whitehouse.gov, ICYMI, murder rate plunges to, and I'm sure you heard this, if you didn't, you're going to hear it now, 125-year low as President Trump restores law and order. 125-year low. Epic Times, CBP records 0 illegal border releases for the 8th consecutive month. 0. 150,000 a month coming. 0. We can't do anything about it. We need more laws. ABC, DHS launches Operation Catch of the Day enforcement action in Maine. They're poking the left like you can't believe. Catch of the day. From Fox, U.S. drug overdose deaths plummet 20% as Trump administration cracks down on the southern border. 20%. Breitbart, France sees more deaths than births for the first time since World War II. Breitbart, China hits lowest birth rate since Communist Revolution of 1949. Zero Hedge, Russia restores mothballed Soviet-era jets as plane shortage worsens. Zero Hedge, German Chancellor Merz admits shutting down nuclear energy. Do you remember Trump said you're going to be at the whims of the Russians and there's nothing you can do about it? And they laughed at him. They publicly laughed at him and said that'll never happen. Guess what? Merz admits shutting down nuclear energy production was a severe strategic mistake. You know, when you're told by the President of the United States you're making a giant mistake, don't do it, and his name is Donald Trump, you should probably pay attention. Okay, who said it? Budget, a way of growing broke methodically. Groucho Marx. Yeah. We had a saying in the military, people would fly down to the Philippines and buy all kinds of stuff because it was really expensive, and we called it going broke, saving money. Okay, I got a Catholic here for you. I believe she did this one. Canada has a dilemma to choose. Bucking Trump, they will certainly lose. Venezuela's got oil, which Canada foils, and Alberta will vote to recuse. We'll see. Okay, irony just won this week. This is not The Onion, they say. It's Gateway Pundit. The Onion is like the Babylon Bee, but it's an older production. illegal migrant fugitive busted trying to evade capture by, this is back at Christmas time and I forgot about it. I had it in my list and I forgot about it. I should have put it at Christmas time for you, but it's still very funny. Illegal migrant fugitive busted trying to evade capture by hiding in an Italian nativity scene posed as one of the three wise men. He's standing there like he's one of the three wise men. Such is the world in which we live. So from Sarasota, Florida to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, I'm Charlie Garrett, and that is your CG Prophecy Report for the week.